Okay. Hi all. As you already know, this is from the Sweet Souls, and Sweet Souls is basically an initiative started in 2014 by Nalini, Ramesh, and Dishana to bring together families with type 1 diabetes to create a support community, share resources, educate, and empower people on diabetes. So we are glad to have you all here, and over to you, Auntie.
Thank you so much, Divya. Can we stop sharing the screen for a moment?
Yeah, just a moment. I have a lot of shells as well. Oh, do you have slides to share, Auntie?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Okay, otherwise you can keep it on. That doesn't matter really.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, good evening, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome. I'm so happy to be here today, and so happy that Cheryl could take out time from her really very busy schedule and be with us and maybe run through her presentation and then answer some questions for us at the end of the session. I don't know what model she has for us today, but hopefully this is going to be an excellent session, and then all of us are going to be benefiting from this session. So a little bit about Cheryl. Cheryl Salis is an eminent registered nutritionist, naturopath, certified diabetes educator, wellness coach, lecturer, health writer, and insulin pump specialist. She has rich experience in the field of nutrition and metabolic disorders, and in the past has worked with multinational companies like Johnson & Johnson, Novo Nordisk, and esteemed hospitals like Leelavati, Holy Family, and Prince Ali Khan Hospital, Mumbai. She's been instrumental in setting up departments for diabetes and wellness management at hospitals and corporate houses, and currently runs nutrition clinics at corporate houses. Over the years, she's trained over 10,000 patients and healthcare professionals. That includes nurses, nutritionists, paramedical staff, and doctors. Um, She's given wellness talks and conducted several workplace wellness programs at leading corporate houses like Wipro, L&T, TCS, Birla, Sun Pharma, Reliance, MPT, and so on. And she currently runs the health coaching program for patient and employee assistance. She has an enviable client list of individuals, celebrities, and corporates who have sought her nutrition advice and expertise. She and her team have successfully helped motivate thousands of people achieve their health goals. She's actively involved in academics, being associated as a course director, faculty, and research guide to various educational institutions, training healthcare professionals. She's often invited as a speaker to many local and national medical conferences. She's also been actively contributing to the print media and has authored 5 patient education books on nutrition, diabetes, carbohydrate counting, and breakfast guide of India. She's very passionate about her profession and enjoys contributing to the society by helping people transform and adapt to a healthy lifestyle. Thank you again so much for joining, Cheryl, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Nalini, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure being with all of you today. And I'd also like to thank Lakshmi, one of my favorite boys, for inviting me here. And he's also my student now. And it's wonderful to see his growth in the area of diabetes education and his passion for the field. And so my talk is going to be more about how we manage, children with type 1 diabetes. And I'll be very happy to answer questions at the end of the session, because I'm sure there are so many questions that are going to be there from parents and people with type 1 diabetes, and I'll be very happy to answer them. So I'll just share my presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so it's going to be on carbohydrate counting. And before I start, I want to dedicate this to my mentor and guide, Dr. Sgaonkar, whom we lost last year. But he's been very instrumental in, getting me to manage children with type 1 diabetes. And I think I drive my passion and, inspiration from him. First things first, I know everybody wants to know about carbohydrate counting, and everybody who has type 1 diabetes wants to learn more about carbohydrate counting. But the most important thing is that while we are doing that, we are dealing with children with type 1 diabetes. They could be, today we have children who are 6 months, 1 year, to, even the older adolescents, to even young adults being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And let me tell you that management of children with type 1 diabetes is very different to management of adults with type 2 diabetes. So this is the first thing. So if you are going to a dietitian or you're going to a doctor, first find out whether the person has experience in managing children with type 1 diabetes, because the diet, or I would say the meal plan, is very, very different to a person with type 2 diabetes that we would plan. So the first thing is the principle of healthy eating. It's very important that the children eat a balanced diet, because remember, they are this is the foundation. So for a building to be strong, we have to ensure that the foundation is very strong. And, that is the most important thing. So this is a very critical phase in a child's life. And we have to ensure that we're giving the child the right nutrients to be able to grow and develop well as reward them in the future, because otherwise we see people falling prey to a lot of these fad diets, and then in the end landing up with a lot of health issues and concerns which they may not even foresee. So first thing first is the food plate. And this is one of the favorite things that I always use, or this is one tool that I always use with my patients in clinic, is to educate them about the importance of eating a balanced diet. So basically half your plate vegetables, all your non-starchy vegetables, because again, here it's very important to mention that when we talk about potato or a sweet potato or any kind of a root vegetable, that is a starch. It's a starchy vegetable, and it will come in your cereal group, because that has higher amount of carbohydrates compared to your gourd vegetables, your leafy vegetables, and your green vegetables. So when we're talking about half the plate being vegetables, it's your non-starchy vegetables. 1/4 of your plate should be cereals, millets, and your starchy vegetables. So potato will come in that 1/4 section, because it also contributes to the carbs. And because in India, we are so deficient in our protein intake, they've seen that even if we are non-vegetarian, we are still deficient in our protein intake. And protein is a very, very important nutrient in everybody's diet, because one is it gives you satiety, and also it helps in the growth and development. So very important is to concentrate on the nutrient protein. And so 1/4 of your plate is protein. So the moment you follow this concept on the food plate, whether it's breakfast, whether it's lunch, whether it's dinner, whether it's an evening snack, you are assured that you're giving your child, or you are consuming, the right balanced diet. So this is the fundamental. So this is something that we start with. And then we progress to carb counting, fat counting, and protein counting. So this is the most important thing. So whether it's breakfast, now it's very simple to get this into a diet. For example, if you're making a dosa, and I'm assuming that we have a large population of people from the city of Hyderabad, right? And their pesarattu dosa is very popular. Okay, again, I think it's a very, very good, dosa, because it helps to keep your glucose levels very controlled. And that is something that we even endorse in West India, or whether it's North India or East India, because it's very, very nutritious. It's a very well-balanced meal. Now, if you want to improve the quality of the dosa, the nutrient quality and density of the dosa, what you can do is you can take oats. You can take one part of oats, which will be a cereal group, one part of pulse, which is your moong or green gram. You take buttermilk. So you, instead to dilute it, you add buttermilk to make the batter, and you grate vegetables, because parents always have a concern that children don't like vegetables. They don't like to eat vegetables. So this is the best way of getting a vegetable into the diet. What you can do is you can grate bottle gourd, you can grate carrots, you can grate whatever vegetable you want. And that way you're having a balanced plate. So basically the carbs will be from the oats. The protein group will be represented by your pulses as well as your dairy group. And then you will have the vegetables. So that makes it a balanced plate. So even if you're just making one item, because I understand in this whole COVID situation, it's very challenging, especially we don't have maids. And if you're working from home, it becomes very difficult to cook very, very, elaborate meals. So very simple one pot recipe will make the food extremely tasty as well as balanced and healthy. Another example is you can make a millet khichdi. I think millets is again very, very popular in your part of the country. And in fact, we are learning to eat millets from your part of the country. And today we know the benefits of millets. So basically you have very good, I think some people only know about jawar or sorghum, or, whether it's pearl millet or finger millet, but there are so many different kinds of millets that we have, and which are really good. For example, foxtail millet, you have barnyard millet, you have samo, you have little millet, you have so many different kinds of millets which have a lower glycemic index. So you can use any of those millets and make a nice khichdi, which is taking the millets, taking pulse, adding vegetables and having it with a glass of buttermilk. Again, a complete meal. So again, very simple ways of incorporating all the nutrients in your child's diet while ensuring that there is adequate nutrients, as well as it is not too time consuming or even expensive. Okay, so this is what is the most important thing. Now, a few things that I want to make clear is that do not exclude any food group, because I know that when we are talking about type 1 diabetes, we have a lot of patient groups, we have a lot of peer support groups, and they endorse a keto diet, or they endorse very low carbs, and they show you that straight line that they have on the CGMS. But remember, it's not only about sugars. For us, there's a lot of other things, well, as I said, this is the foundation, especially when it comes to children. So while the adults, above the age of 18 are free and they're responsible to take decisions for themselves, I think as children, it's very important that we give them a balanced diet, because these diets, we do not have long-term studies. What studies we have is not more than 2 to 5 years. We really need long-term studies to know the effect of these diets on people. Another thing is always do something which has no expiry date, which a person can continue for life. And honestly speaking, I must have seen more than 2,000 plus type 1 patients in my practice of the last 21 years. And just reducing the carbs to around 45 to 50%, we have managed to get good blood glucose control. Okay, so this is what I'm telling you with experience. And also the ISPAD, which is the International Society for Pediatric and Adolescent Diabetes, as per their last guidelines were released in 2018, they do not endorse a ketogenic or a very low carb diet for children. We don't know what the next guidelines have in store for us, but this is what I'm talking to you as per the last guidelines that were released. So do not follow any of these kind of extreme diets, just balanced nutrition, balanced diet with all the food groups in moderate amounts is the only way to achieve good glycemic control and good health. So getting adequate nourishment and nutrition is very important for our children. So remember, as parents, you are responsible for your kids. You all are taking decisions for your children. And whatever it is, I would always encourage and urge you that please go and speak to your doctor before you endorse or you embark on any kind of a diet. Today we have, in fact, we have a lot of children, parents who come to us who do not want to give insulin to the child. So they think that, I don't want to give insulin and carb is a villain. I have to give insulin for carbs. So I don't give carbs at all. But we see that these children are not able to follow it for long. We've seen a lot of stunted growth in these children. They're not growing. And remember, for girls, they actually grow in height only till they achieve menarche, okay, or their menses. So very important is to keep that in mind. Try and keep the same foods daily. Most often we eat the same thing. Our vegetable changes, our roti or rice or our dosa remains the same. So try and keep the carbs consistent for the insulin. Again, very important is blood glucose testing. I think we are blessed with technology today where we have the CGMS, we have the AGP, which actually gives us a very good idea of how the blood glucose levels are being impacted with food, with our medication, with insulin, with stress, with exams, with menses. There's so many factors. So it's not only food. You know, there's so much. Even stress can be a huge contributor. Physical activity, we see, I'm sure you'll have experienced it. The children's exam times, the sugars run high. It's because suddenly there's no physical activity. So physical activity has a huge role to play. Child is not well, child has got fever, cough, cold, sugars will run high. And match carbs to the insulin. I think we are blessed. I'm telling you, when I started my journey in the field of diabetes education, this was way back in 2000, we had premix insulins. So we had, a premix 30-70 or 50-50, and our kids were on those insulins. And therefore, we had to be very rigid. You know, we had to wake up the child in the morning, be it a holiday, be it any day, that please get up, take your insulin. Or in the night, we had to force feed the child to have a bedtime snack. You know, so wake up the child from the sleep and push that glass of milk because you're worried about hypo in the night. But today with the newer insulins coming, with the short acting insulin, you have rapid acting insulin, you have fast acting insulin, and you have your long acting insulins, which are peakless. I think it has really done a world of good for our kids because today there is a lot of flexibility. In fact, today morning, one of my patients messaged me that, she's not feeling hungry. And I said, okay, don't take your bolus shot of insulin. Don't take the morning bolus because she's on a rapid acting insulin, and don't eat anything. Obviously, we won't encourage this every day because then this is not the right thing to do, is because you want to ensure that the child gets their budget of carbs, calorie, fat that the child needs. But once in a way, like a holiday, or, when the child is just not feeling like eating, they have to be told that they're just normal like any other child. The only thing that is missing in their body is insulin. And I think that ways we will have, because I've seen children who are diagnosed at, 20 years, maybe 30 years back. There were so many restrictions that were put on these children that today they're rebels. For them, it's like, they are just not able to come to terms with the diabetes. They're not able, they really are so attracted to food. They're actually, I would say they live to eat, is because then they've suddenly been deprived of everything and now they've become adults and they can do what they want and they become rebels. But I'm telling you, our children now, the newer, the children who've been diagnosed in the last 5-10 years, I see that they have been more accepting about their condition is only because they can lead a life like every other child, pursue sports, pursue their dance, do everything, and just match carbs to insulin. So it's not like you're giving carbs for the insulin that, okay, I'm giving so much insulin, I have to eat so much carbs. You eat less, you take less insulin. You eat more, you take more insulin. So therefore, there's a lot of flexibility. Obviously, with flexibility comes responsibility and accountability, which we educate the children about. Now, why we do carb counting? Because if you look at meals, every meal is different. And, today our children like to eat snacks as dinner. Dinner could be just idli, or it could be dosa, or it could be something like a snacky item. And the carbs at each meal are very different. And therefore, you have to do carb counting. And therefore, once we finish educating the children about, the healthy plate concept, we'll move to the next thing, which is carb counting. Now, why do we do carb counting? Now, if you look at this, in the past, we never used to have these cups in our clinics, but today we've started keeping them, or even when we're doing virtual consultations, we ask the mother, when you're saying a cup of rice, what do you mean by a cup of rice? And especially I'm telling you, I've come to Hyderabad many times because I used to train the staff at care hospitals in Hyderabad, and I used to come very frequently and I visited the cafeterias and, especially I used to work with a lot of people from Singapore and, that part of the region. And they used to be surprised that the amount of carbs we eat, because the plate used to be completely heaped with rice. And if I were to ask the person saying that you're eating 1 cup, my cup, what I'm imagining is the cup on top. But what the person is actually telling me is a cup down. And, our dinner sets are so different today. So even like, I always say that don't feel too happy when you fit into a small of a particular brand, because even the brands have become smart. They know that we like to be in a size smaller. So some of them, especially if you go to some of these popular brands, Actually, you're a large size, but you fit into their small and you feel happy about it. Okay, so everyone's getting very smart. So we went, I mean, but at the end of it, you're only fooling yourself. So very important is to know the portions and count carbs accordingly. And when it's in North India, then the paratha, or even if it's parents, I know a lot of parents, if the child says, I want only one chapati or only one roti, you tend to make it slightly bigger or thicker. It's because you want the child to eat more. I'm sure all of us have experienced it with our parents or with our grandparents. But when it comes to carb counting, we have to be as accurate as possible in our estimations. Then we come to what foods have carbs. Now, this is a very, very important thing. Remember, I think before type 1 happened, whether it's happened to your child or whether it's happened to you, or even before I became a dietitian, I didn't really know what carbs, protein, and fat is. We ate food. Nobody spoke about carbs and have to count carbs and, what foods have carbs. I think all this has become very popular now. I don't think our grandparents even bothered about it because there's so much of physical activity that they didn't have to do anything. They were very fit. They were very healthy. And today, with us becoming so inactive and so sedentary, we have started focusing on all these aspects. But in type 1 diabetes, this becomes a very, very important and a crucial aspect to focus on. So what foods have carbs? Whether you have gluten-free bread, whether you have brown bread, whether you have white bread, it has carbs. All your rotis, millets have carbs. A lot of people think that ragi has no carbs. In fact, if you will be surprised to know, and I've also mentioned it in my book, and I think you must have seen it when you consume ragi or your child has consumed ragi. Ragi has a very high glycemic index of 84. And it spikes up the glucose levels rapidly. And every person with diabetes will switch to having ragi. And they'll have ragi as a mid-meal snack without insulin and wonder, why is my next pre-meal coming high? So millets have got carbs. Very, very important. Your potatoes, your biscuits, whether it's your sugar-free biscuits, multigrain biscuits, oats biscuit, ragi biscuits, all have carbs. Your rice has carbs, your poha has carbs. I mean, all what I've shown here has got carbs. Even your milk has carbs. And therefore, a lot of people wonder, can I give 2 glasses of milk to my child? And then, they'll give it in the evening as a snack without insulin. And they're shocked to see that the pre-dinners are 300. Remember, milk has got lactose and it is a sugar. Lactose is a sugar. And secondly, you're having milk in a liquid form. So what happens is that when you have it in a liquid form, and if you're having it maybe as a pre-workout or maybe as a part of your short-acting insulin, which needs that bedtime snack. So that is where you can take in your milk. But otherwise, milk does shoot up glucose levels, and maybe we can discuss it at the end of the session. So milk also, if taken in larger quantities, will need insulin to cover it. It again depends on your pre-meal insulin. We come to yogurts. Remember at home what we make or what is available as a plain Greek yogurt outside or a plain yogurt outside will have lesser carbs, but most people and most children love flavored yogurts. So flavored yogurts are very high in sugar content. And I'm going to show you that. Cornflakes. I know a lot of people like cornflakes, but cornflakes has a high glycemic index of 134. So it's very high in its sugar raising property. And therefore we tell all children or everybody actually with diabetes to try and avoid cornflakes. Now, what are the foods which have got no or less carbs? So remember, all non-veg foods have got no carbs. So whether you have chicken, fish, eggs, no carbs. Okay, so they're carb-free foods, but they do have protein and they are also having saturated fat. So again, in moderation, it can be consumed. It's a good source of protein, but you cannot have too much of it. And I'm sure our kids will not go and have 300 or 500 grams of meat at a time. They're going to obviously eat lesser. Then we come to all your green vegetables. So only your starchy vegetables, whether it's a potato or a sweet potato, will have carbs. But all your green vegetables, all your gourd vegetables will have no carbs. Now the question arises is, can I give beetroot? Can I give carrot to my child? Boiled beetroot, boiled carrot will have a higher glycemic index because it is moist cooking. Remember, moist cooking has a high GI. But when it is your raw carrot or raw beetroot, it can be given as a part of salad. So there's no problem. So all your vegetables, all your green leafy vegetables, nuts are considerably lower in carbs, except for cashew nuts. Cashew nuts, somehow we've seen shoots up glucose. In fact, that day, one of my patients had one fistful of cashew nuts and sugar went up to 400. So therefore, you have to watch how, and remember, this is just a generalized thing, but every food will react very differently on your body. Some people say, this doesn't increase my sugar. And somebody else will say, oh my God, even if I have yogurt, my sugar goes up. So it's very, very individualized, and you are the best judge to know what suits your body and what doesn't suit your body. And please listen to your body. Then we come to all your oil, butter, and ghee. Remember, sometimes I get pictures of 1 spoon of butter, how much carbs? No carbs. 1 spoon of ghee, how much carbs? No carbs. So oil, butter, ghee does not have carbs. But again, we're not going to tell you that you can have ad libitum, because obviously it's a source of fat. Some of them are sources of saturated fat, and they can have an ill effect on your heart. So therefore, all these foods in moderation are good to use. Then another few things that you need to invest in. One is your food weighing scale. At least people, I'm sure whoever have consulted me, we insist that you buy this. It's not as expensive. It costs 600 rupees or even lesser. You have your food measuring cups. Again, this is very, very good because it doesn't again cost too much. I think 25 to 30 bucks it costs you, but it's good because the carb counting book that I have written for Medtronic has got measures in cups. So it's very easy for you to understand what is the amount of carbs. Then, your home soup bowl or your dessert bowl, your ladle, your measuring cup. So these are good things. Today, children eat a lot out of packets, or even we eat a lot of our packets. Packets have got food labels. It's important to understand how to read food labels, to decode food labels. This is very, very important. Now, when we come to chapati, now what we do here is that one is, remember, every house has a different chapati size. So the carb count of a chapati in every house will differ. Now, I cannot tell you that, no, you make a chapati which is only 15 grams. That's too much effort because you have a maid or you have a cook or you make it and you're used to making that particular size. And therefore, what we usually ask, the individual to do is you weigh the flour. You tell us how many chapatis come out of that flour. For example, you take 100 grams of wheat flour and you tell us, okay, 3 chapatis or 4 chapatis that you're getting. And then we will back calculate and tell you how much carbs is in each chapati. So that this is one time that you need to do the standardization. So this is when the child comes to us or even when the child is diagnosed, we tell the parents do this once so that you know what is the size of your chapati, you know what is the carbs, and that will remain standard. Now remember millet, if you're making a roti out of millets, the carb count is even higher. So please, because it becomes a little thicker, so it requires a little more flour. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. And the same principle that you weigh the flour and then you tell us how many rotis you're making out of it, and then we'll calculate the carbs. Now, when it comes to rice, it's very, very simple. So basically you have this cups. So the cups that I showed you, I just here one second. So these are your cups. So basically, if you see this one cup is your 30 grams of carbs. So we've done this exercise for all types of rice, whether it's parboiled rice, brown rice, all different kinds and varieties of rice. But 1 cup of rice is 30 grams of carbs and the cooked weight is 130 grams. So this is something that you don't need to do it. We've already done the standardization and you can just use that. Now, white bread versus brown bread. A lot of people think brown bread is healthy, and we usually end up eating more because we think that's healthier than the white bread. But remember, whether it's white bread or brown bread or gluten-free bread, it still has carbs. In fact, we've seen that the gluten-free bread is slightly more heavier and may have more carbs. So therefore, it's very important to read the food label. If you're making the bread at home, weigh your ingredients and then figure out that what is the size of each bread and what is the amount of carbs that each slice of bread would have. But white bread versus brown bread, the carbs in both of them are similar. Then when it comes to cereals, I've already mentioned about cornflakes. I told you it has a high glycemic index, and therefore cornflakes wouldn't be my recommendation for anybody with diabetes. Because what happens is you have the cornflakes and again in half an hour, 1 hour, you're hungry. Because it increases the glucose levels and suddenly your glucose levels drop down. And therefore, it's very important to try, look for other healthier options. Oats is a good option for people with diabetes, but remember when you're buying oats, you get 3 types of oats in the market. I think you'll have to mute. Yeah. So you get 3 types of oats in the market. And if I'm speaking to most of you all from Hyderabad, I think Ratnadeep is one popular supermarket that you'll have there. Look for your steel cut oats or rolled oats. Instant oats will instantly rise the glucose levels. So stay away from anything which has adjectives like instant, flavored, this, or anything which is processed, because that will instantly rise the glucose levels. Then when it comes to muesli, I know a lot of kids who like to have muesli, but again with muesli, look at your food label, read the ingredients, buy the muesli which has got more fiber and less sugar. So you get the sugar-free, high-fiber muesli, and that is something that you could consume. What you can do is at home, you add your nuts and seeds so that, you're giving the good healthy fats, and you can stay away from the raisins and all the dry fruits. Remember, people get confused between dry fruit and nuts. Dry fruits are concentrated in sugar, so they will increase the glucose levels. And that should be put to use only when the glucose levels are low. But other times, try and use your nuts and seeds. Chocos is also not something that I would recommend. And I would suggest that if your child has a siblings, if your child has diabetes, and if you have another child without diabetes, ensure that they eat the same thing. Do not differentiate, because we're seeing a lot of children today becoming obese as well as getting type 2 diabetes very early on in life. Then when we come to idli dosa, now we all know that idli dosa is great. And if, our grandmothers did not study science, but they applied science in the traditional foods that they cooked and we ate. Remember, idli dosa is great in terms of its composition, because it's a good mix of your your cereals to protein. So when you combine cereals with pulses in the ratio of 3:1, it becomes a complete protein, because what is lacking in cereals is there in pulses. What is lacking in pulses is there in cereals. So when you combine them together, which is in most of our Indian foods, it becomes a good quality protein. But remember, anything which is fermented, though it improves the nutrient quality, it also increases the glycemic index. And therefore, you will notice that even if you're counting your carbs right, but with idli and dosa, you need to give additional insulin. And the reason is that moist cooking and your fermentation increases the glycemic index. So idli will rise the blood glucose levels more rapidly than dosa. Now, outside when you're eating, be a little watchful, because I've come across a lot of people who add refined flour to the idli batter or to the dosa batter outside in restaurants to increase the volume. So be watchful. Always have your idli and dosa with chutney. Don't shun the coconut. It's not bad for our kids. One or two tablespoons of your chutney, or maybe 1 small cup of chutney is good, because it's fat. Fat releases the glucose slowly, so it gives a sustained release of glucose. So your sambar, and always say that instead of having more idlis, have more sambar. So you can add 2 cups of sambar, have 2 idlis, and have a bowl of chutney with it. And this will be a perfect meal. It will also keep the blood glucose levels under control. And if you notice that every time you have an idli and dosa, glucose levels are high post-meal, take additional insulin, discuss with your dietitian, discuss with your educator or your doctor. Now, the next myth is dals have no carbs. I have so many people who come and tell me, we are following a carb-free diet. And I'm like, wow, let me know what you're eating. And then they tell me they have chillas, which is nothing but a pesarattu dosa, or sprouts, or dal. And I'm like, how does it become no carbs? So this is another misconception, and I've seen that this is there even with doctors. So many doctors believe that dals have no carbs. But let me tell you that cereals, if you take 30 grams of cereal, it has 21 grams of carbs. 30 grams of a pulse will have 15 grams of carbs. So remember, 50% is your carbs, and therefore you have to count carbs when it comes to dal. Because a lot of people will have, will drink 2 cups of dal and wonder why is the glucose level going high after the meal. Preparations, and all of them are 15 grams of carbs. This is all from my book. Your sprouts, your chana. Now, when it comes to potato and sweet potato, I know in the past, even I'm guilty of the fact that anybody who came to me with diabetes, I would say, don't eat the potato. don't eat the sweet potato. But today we allow our kids with diabetes to eat it. And I'll tell you how we can incorporate this in the diet. Okay, so 100 grams of potato and 60 grams of sweet potato gives you roughly around 15 grams of carbs. Your fruits. Again, fruits are a source of carbs, but they're also a source of fiber. And we allow our children with diabetes to even have a mango, to even have a banana, and they do beautifully well. So have it when the glucose levels are normal and when the child is going for an exercise. So the child is going down to play, going cycling, going dancing. That is the best time to give a fruit, whether it's a banana or whether it's mango. And mango season, we encourage them to have a mango, and you should see the smile on their faces. It's so gratifying and satisfying to see that. So eat seasonal fruits, like now in the summers, try and have more summery fruits because that is got more water content and that is what we need. But again, fruit, the principle is do not eat fruits after meals, eat fruit in between breakfast and lunch or between lunch and dinner, especially if you're on a short acting insulin, then mid-morning is the best time to have fruit and nuts, or an evening snack before going down to play. You can even make a smoothie, but not with milk. You know, fruit and milk is not a good combination. Even according to Ayurveda, they're considered to be viruddha foods. That means opposite foods. You're supposed to have fruit with curd. So that is something that is good to have. Now, when it comes to milk, I've already spoken about milk. So milk is good as a bedtime snack for people who are on short-acting insulin or on a pre-mix insulin who require a snack at bedtime. And if taken in the morning, take it with breakfast, count the carbs. If they're taking it in the evening, then it needs to be taken with insulin, especially if you're having one glass of it with something else, then insulin is required. When it comes to curd or yogurt, if you're having plain yogurt or curd, if you have half a cup, which is this small cup, then this has roughly around 120 grams of, this is 120 to 125 grams, and it's roughly got around 5 grams of carbs, and it is considered a low carb food. So it doesn't require insulin. This season, the best thing is you make a buttermilk. You can make 2 glasses of buttermilk with so much of yogurt, add some jeera powder, add some pepper powder. Jeera powder is your cumin powder, and give it nice and chilled. You can even blend a cucumber into it. Taste the cucumber before you blend it, because some cucumber can be bitter and it can be poisonous, but that again is a good option to take. Again, not too much of it. I remember I had one patient and the glucose levels were consistently high. And I was wondering, you know, why is the sugars going high? And I used to keep asking her, what do you consume? She says, no, nothing, only curd, because this child had celiac, this child has hypothyroidism, and this child was type 1 diabetic. So she says, no, we're having only curd. And then, you know, we asked her, how much curd are you consuming? And she says, 1 kilo of curd. And obviously that's going to increase the blood glucose levels. So even when we're talking about low carb foods, they have to be consumed in moderation. Then when we come to paneer or cottage cheese, the same thing. 85 grams of paneer will be 10 grams of carbs. So you take half of it, then it is 5 grams of carbs, and you can make a paneer salad, or you can just have paneer tikka, and it becomes a good low carb food, especially for children who are vegetarian. Jaggery, sugar, and honey. A lot of people will switch to sugar. Switch from sugar to jaggery or to honey, thinking it is a healthier alternative. And I have seen when it comes to sugar-free sweets, we eat them by the kilo because we think that it's carb-free and it's calorie-free. Remember that it only doesn't have sugar, but it has the same amount of carbs, it has the same amount of calories. And just because we know it's healthy, or our mind thinks it's diet, or because it's sugar-free, we end up eating double. So for birthday parties, I always say, please eat the regular thing and take less. But, or if you're having even the healthier version, make sure you don't overindulge and don't eat too much, because then that can also shoot your glucose levels. Because usually what is available outside will be very high on fat, and the impact on blood glucose levels will be high. The sugar-free foods, so these are all your carb or low carb foods or no carb foods, which are your best, arms and ammunition in between your meals. So between breakfast and lunch, or between lunch and dinner, sometimes the children are hungry and they want to eat something and you're not giving them insulin, then these are your foods to go to. So whether it's eggs, you can make a boiled egg, or you can make an omelette, or you can make scrambled egg, you can make Spanish omelette, you can make a salad which has got chicken or egg or paneer. or a little bit of beans, that's fine. You can have chicken or fish. You can have cheese once in a way. Remember, cheese is also a source of sodium and saturated fats. So we won't recommend it daily, but yes, once in a way, it's fine. And children love cheese. Your buttermilk, curd in limited amount, nuts, one fistful of nuts. Even soya bean is considered a low carb option, and all your green vegetables. Now, when it comes to your insulin, if you're in a pre-mix insulin, like a Mixtard 3070 or a human insulin 3070, there we have to be very rigid with the amount of carbs and the timing that we're giving the insulin. However, today with the newer kind of insulins coming in, we do calculate. So remember, carb counting can be done only and only in people who are on separate basal and separate bolus. For example, the child is on a long-acting insulin or an intermediate-acting insulin and 3 shots or 4 shots of rapid or fast-acting or short-acting insulin. That is where carb counting works really well. And that is where we use carb counting. So insulin to carb ratio, I'm sure all of you know, it's a very simple formula, but this is just the starting point. Okay, it's going to differ and it varies because of different kinds of factors. So for regular acting insulin, we use the formula 450 divided by total daily dose. For people who are on rapid acting insulin, we use the formula 500 divided by total daily dose. For children who are less than 5 years and on less than 10 units of insulin a day, the formula could be 300 to 450. Again, it's very, very individualized. This is something that we just start with, but then we keep checking the glucose levels pre-meal. We check the glucose levels 2 hours after the meal, and we check the glucose levels another 4 hours after the meal. And at 4 hours, if the child is achieving the targets, then we know that this insulin is working well, or the insulin to carb ratio is working well. Now, what is the total daily dose? So if you are on the pump, and we will understand how many people are on the pump, but on the pump, if you go to utilities, you will find a feature which is called daily totals. So it will tell you how much is the insulin that you are taking or your child is taking every day. So basically you go and take an average of the last 5 days, just remove out or exclude one such day where the child has gone for a birthday party or the child has eaten a lot and taken more insulin. So exclude that day. Take your regular 5 days or 6 days and take an average of that, and you will arrive at the total daily dose. If you are or your child is on a separate insulin, for example, if is on MDI, which is multiple daily insulin injections, then you see how much of the insulin that the child is on, whether it's Lantus or Tresiba or NPH, or you have so many different Basalog, there's so many different insulins. So you add that to your bolus doses, whether it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, all that, you add it all together. So this is your total daily dose. So this is the amount of insulin that the child is taking on an average every day. So this is the starting formula, and this is important. For example, this child is on 34 units of insulin a day. According to the formula, it's either 500 or 450. Now here the child is on a rapid acting insulin. So what we do is we take 500 divided by 34. So 500 divided by 34 is 15. That means this child needs 1 unit of insulin for 15 grams of carbs. And that is attending a lecture, and one doctor spoke very beautifully where he says that it's your currency. So basically, 1 unit, you're buying so many carbs. So basically with 1 unit, you can buy 15 carbs. So if you're taking 5 units, you can take 5 into 15. So that is the amount of carbs that the child can consume. Now quiz, and I want all of you all to respond in the chat box. I've not been checking the questions, but I will look at it in the end. Khushi's insulin to carb ratio is 1:20. She's eating 100 grams of carbs for lunch. So Khushi would need how much of insulin? Can you put your answers in the chat box? I'm waiting to see. Okay, 5. Everyone's saying 5. So you're all fabulous. Okay, so that's the right answer. The answer is 5. So this is what you would assume, but obviously you're going to give 5 units of insulin for this 100 grams of carb. Check the sugars after 2 hours, check again after 4 hours and see. But very important is your starting of the meal. So your pre-meal insulin should be in range. So it should be below 120. Now, what if you are at a sugar of 200 and you need to take 5 units of insulin? Will you take extra or will you take less? You'll actually take a little more because your starting point is on the higher side. So that is where you'll have to apply the correction factor or the insulin sensitivity factor and take a correction for that extra sugar that you are at, and then apply the insulin to carb ratio. Now we come to the next. Now I'm having this exercise. Now I will want more participation from you all. So it'll be nice if you'll keep your cameras on so that, I mean, whoever can, because it'll be nice for me to see faces. I can see Divya, so it's nice because I know that you're understanding. Otherwise, I really don't know. I can see Chanda. Excellent. Hi, Chanda. So good to see you. So now let's do this calculation. Okay, so we have 2 chapatis. We have 1 cup of cooked rice. We have half a cup of dal. We have salad. And we have Bengan bhaja. I'm sure in Hyderabad, everybody loves Bengan. I don't know what you'll call it, but I have a friend who's a Reddy, and I love going to her house and eating all these delicacies. So how much carbs? Can we guess? Okay, Sheetal says extra. Absolutely, Sheetal. And we can discuss this when we are, discussing the question and answers. But how much carbs?
55.
55, okay. Y'all want, you can put your thing on chat, or you'll want to keep your 85, Shalu is saying, okay.
Mm.
120, Subbu is saying, okay. I can see Harsh. Harsh that can't answer, okay. I'm sure he knows this. So my students are not allowed to answer. Okay, so should I proceed? Okay, so 100, okay. So basically the answer is 85 grams. I'll tell you how I arrived at it, okay. Now this chapati, each one is weighing 40 grams. So basically 2 chapatis, it'll give you 15 grams each. So 15 grams each, so 30 grams. Rice, I told you, 130 grams of rice gives you 30 grams of carbs. Dal, half a cup. This half a cup of dal gives you 15. But remember with dal, it can be very different. It depends on the consistency of your dal. It can be very thin, like a rasam. It can be a sambar. It can be a thick dal, especially from where Harsh is, where you'll have to actually put a spoon and like you're eating the dal because it's so thick. So there the carb count will be higher compared to somebody who is having a watery dal, or what part of the dal you take. So this is just an approximate thing, but this dal has got 15 grams of carbs because I've done the standardization. So that's why I'm very sure about the value. Your vegetables, we will count 5 grams. And for this Bengan bhaja, again 5 grams. So if you see in total, it comes to 85 grams. So we said we need 1 unit of insulin for 15 grams of carbs. So for 85 grams of carbs, we need 6 units of insulin. I hope you'll have got this right. You'll have understood. Anybody has a doubt or anybody has a different opinion? Okay, now we go to the next part. Now the same chapati, okay, because my house chapati size doesn't change, it remains the same. So it's that much, my rice. I've replaced my dal today. Today is my non-veg day, so I'm having chicken curry, okay, with 2 pieces of chicken. So it's well below 100 grams of chicken. And I've added a vegetable, and I'm having my favorite Bengan again. I think children love this. I have an 11-year-old boy who can eat this every day. So I know children love this. So how much carbs here? Same, less, more? Shalu, is this for this plate 70? Less, so Mayank is saying less. 75, okay. 65, less 75. Okay, so good. We've got quite a few answers. So let's see what the answer is. So the answer is 75 grams. So you're all fabulous. So 75 is the answer. So how we get this is, remember, when I'm replacing my dal with chicken. So dal had 15 grams of carbs, chicken has no carbs, but I'm assuming that the gravy that I'm using to cook the chicken, so there's some amount of onion, tomato, okay? So that I'm counting as 5. So that will be 5, and remaining everything else remains the same. So my dal is being replaced by chicken. So what do? I give 1 unit less, because otherwise you all are wondering, you know, I have given 6 units yesterday. Sugars were very good post meal. Today I'm giving the same 6 units, same type of meal, and the sugars have gone down. But I've replaced dal with chicken, or in some cases you've replaced dal with rasam, or you've replaced dal with a kadhi, which is your dahi curry, or something which has got lesser carbs. So that is why this is important to know. Or an egg curry or a fish curry, it'll have lesser carbs. Now we come to the next thing. Okay, now I have my chapati, I have the rice. I'm talking about the same lunch. I have my chicken, I have the salad. But what I've done is I've replaced the brinjal with potato. Children love potatoes, and any child you tell them with diabetes, you know, if you tell them they can eat potato, you should see the smile on their face. They feel so happy. Okay, so how much of carbs will this meal have? I'm looking at the chats. 100, 100, 85, Amreen, Shika is 85, 70, 85, 95. Okay, so the answer is 85. So what I've done is I've replaced the dal carbs with the potato. So I've cooked the potato vegetable, which is 80 grams cooked weight, and this has got 15 grams of carbs. So what you can do is you can do this the day when you're giving a food which has got lesser carbs. So if you're replacing dal with chicken or with egg or with fish or maybe soya bean vegetable, because I'm sure a lot of you will eat that, then you can add a potato and do not go low on the insulin. You give the same dose of insulin. So that way you can keep your insulin very consistent and even the carbs very consistent. So I hope you'll have got this, you know, it's very short time, but I've tried my best to convey this to you all, but this is something that you all can put into practice. The new book that I'm coming out with will have weightages, so you all don't even have to take the efforts now of weighing the food. We've done most of the food's weight, so you all just have to look at it and know how much carbs the food is. So only thing is you'll have to buy is a food weighing scale. So anybody who's into business and wants to get into food weighing scale business, please do it, because the next book will help your sales. Okay, now we come to poha. I think this is something that I think is consumed in all parts of India. Okay, so poha. So how much of carbs do you think does poha have? Now this is cooked weight, 80 grams of carbs. 80 grams is cooked weight, not carbs, 80 grams. How much of carbs would this have? Waiting for the book, yeah, Chanda. I'm coming to the protein and fats bit. That's the last thing in my presentation. So how much of it? How much carbs? Can we have a guess? Is everyone awake? 20 grams, Sheetal says. 20 grams, 25 grams, 15 grams, 35 grams. Okay, see, we are all on, you know, thinking of different carbs. So that's a good thing. So poha, if you look at this, has got 30 grams of carbs. Okay, but remember that if you give insulin, suppose you give 2 units of insulin for this meal, you will see that even post-meal, the sugars are on the higher side. Usually you will notice that with poha, sugars are high. Is because poha has a high glycemic index. Like I mentioned about cornflakes and about ragi, poha also spikes up the glucose levels. And therefore, watch after 2 hours, check again after 4 hours. After 4 hours, if the sugars are coming in range, fine. Or else you will have to give additional insulin to this. So that's why your insulin to carb ratio can be very, very different. You may need to do your own tweaks depending on how your blood glucose levels are post the meal. So this is something, because I have got a lot of patients who do fabulously well with poha, and some people, the moment they eat poha, sugars just spike up on the CGMS. Because today the poha that is available is not really hand pounded, and therefore it's not even a rich source of iron. In the past, we used to encourage people to eat poha because it was actually pounded in iron utensils. So it is a very rich source of iron, but today poha is not a rich source of iron. To improve the glycemic index or to lower the glycemic index, please add peanuts. And I know a lot of parents who come and say, oh my God, can we give peanuts to children? Is it not bad? But remember, peanuts is good. It's a good source of MUFA fats. It's the most inexpensive source of good fat, and it's low in carbs, and our children can consume it. So please add peanuts to the poha. If you're non-vegetarian, you can have an egg before the poha so that the blood glucose levels are better controlled. Now we come to the next most popular food, which is upma. I think upma, and I know in chutneys you get pesarattu with upma. So the carbs go up. So what I do is I never have the upma, I only have the pesarattu. But remember, that is also a carb protein combination. If you see that traditionally they've managed to get the cereal and pulse combination. So they give you a pesarattu with the upma just to ensure that they're having a good cereal pulse combination. But in diabetes, you can avoid the upma, or you'll have to take additional insulin because it becomes too much of carbs. So how much of carbs in this upma? I'm missing chutneys a lot. I wish we could even eat virtually. 30, 30, 40, 30. Okay, now everyone is suddenly become very good at their carb counts. Okay. So the answer is 30 grams. Okay, so this much of upma has got 30 grams of carbs. Okay, but like I told you, you will have to see for yourself whether you need more or you need less. Again, add vegetables, add sprouts, add peanuts so that you can lower the glycemic load of this meal. Now we come to the next thing, which is reading food labels. Very, very important. Whenever you're buying biscuit packets, I know a lot of people who go and buy an oats biscuit, a ragi biscuit, sugar-free cookies, because so much is available. Remember, they know that India has got the highest number of people with diabetes and obesity and cardiac, that, you know, this is the place where the health food industry will boom. But very important is don't get misguided. Okay, don't fall prey to the read the labels. Very, very important. So if you look at that yogurt, and this is a very popular brand of yogurt, I'm not naming it, but if you look at it, if you buy the flavored yogurt, 1 cup of flavored yogurt has got 16 grams of carbs, which is nearly 3 teaspoons of sugar. It's got 3 teaspoons of sugar. So it's very, very high in its sugar content. And therefore, buy plain yogurt. What you can do is in this season, especially in the summers, you can actually add fruit, you can add some crushed nuts, and that will be the best thing to consume. So remember, your diet foods, your sugar-free foods, they're not carb-free, they're not calorie-free. So that's about your packets. Now we come to the last point. You know, somebody had this question, what about protein and fat? Now, typically in our Indian foods, you know, our Indian home-cooked meals, where we eat less than 20 grams of fat per meal, and less than 30 grams of protein per meal, we really don't need to do protein and fat counting. Now, where does this become important? Suppose you're having a pizza from outside, or you're having a pizza made at home with a lot of cheese, a lot of meat toppings, or paneer. Then yes, there it will increase the glucose level. And remember, protein and fat releases glucose slowly. So it will take around 3 to 4 hours for it to show up in the sugars. Again, your Mughlai food or your biryanis, your rich biryanis, which I'm so missing now. Okay, again, that will increase your sugars because that's got a lot of fat content. So more fat, more protein, the sugars will go higher. So the ISPAT guidelines say that you need to take up to 20%, but always start slow. Remember, never overestimate. It's okay to be high, but it's not good to be low. So when confused, should I take 6 units or take 5? Take 5, but play safe. But take insulin. I know a lot of people whose sugars pre-meal are on the lower side, so they don't take insulin and they eat the food, and post-meal is 300 and 400. You have to take insulin for the food, but use the correction factor and take less. So when it comes to protein and fat counting, first is apply your carbs. Start with carb counting. Then you proceed to doing the protein and fat, and it works beautifully if you're on an insulin pump. Because in the pump, you have different features. You have the normal bolus, you have a square wave bolus, and you have a dual wave bolus. So normal bolus is for all your normal regular meals. Like you're having a sandwich or you're having, there is something called a super bolus also. So for people who are on a pump, there is something called super bolus where you can actually remove some part. You can do a zero basal for 2 hours and pull that basal amount into your bolus. So suppose you're at a basal of 0.5 units per hour. So you can pull that 1 units and put it in your bolus, and you can put the basal at 0. And it works beautifully for all your high GI foods. For cornflakes and all, it works beautifully. Okay, but otherwise your normal bolus, but for most Indian meals where we eat good protein, fat, carbs, everything together, then a dual wave bolus works very well. A 60-40 is what you could try. Again, this is just something that I'm telling you what is, researched and evidence-based, but where best what is suiting your body. Some people say 50-50 works well. Some people say no, 70-30 works well. So what works well. So initially, remember, magic doesn't happen in a day. I tell people who come to me also that you will not get that graph, what you want to see, or that time and range that you want to see on day 2. It is not going to happen. It's something that we are going to do over a period of time. We're going to see how it works. And then only you will know your body very well. You'll know how your body is responding. And there are many, many factors. For example, period time is something that we see that the sugars go on the higher side. Exams, stress, fever, cold. There's so many factors. Weekdays and weekends are so different. And I'm sure you all know it. Okay, again, morning in the adolescent age group, the puberty. The growth hormone is picking up in the morning. So there's a lot of insulin resistance. So fasting glucose is high, because fasting in glucose is high, and then you give a high carb food. For example, you give idli, dosa, poha, upma. The sugars are going to be high through the day. So that's the time where you will have to try and get that fasting under control. Work with your doctor, get your basals sorted, get your fasting under control, because the concept is fix the fasting first. If the fasting is not under control, your whole day is going to be high because the liver is going to keep pouring out glucose. So on that note, I'm going to stop. So whatever pictures I've shown you, most of them are from the Carb Count book. I'm sure you all know about it. This is the book that I've recently written, which was launched last year. And Lakshmi was there for the launch. Nalini was there for the launch. Harsh was there. It's called Diet and Diabetes Simplified. And I've dedicated one chapter to protein, carb, and fat counting. There's a chapter on carbs, there's a chapter on fat, there's a chapter on protein. There is a lot of recipes. And I've tried my best. And the new book that I'm coming out with will have all the weightages for foods. So it'll have a lot of foods with the weights of the cooked items. So hopefully that should also help you all. So thank you so much for your patient hearing, and I'll be very happy to take questions. I hope I've not exceeded time. Nalini?
Not at all, Cheryl. It was such a wonderful, informative session.
Thank you.
And I think there are a lot of questions. How should we do it? Should we ask them to put it in the chat box?
Yeah, I'm going to answer them, but maybe you can ask me, because I have, okay, or I don't know how it's, somebody wants to ask, or how do you want to do it?
Yes, I'll be asking Cheryl.
Okay, Divya, sure.
So there are 3 questions so far, which weren't covered. So one is the weight while counting carbs indicated here for raw food or cooked food?
No, the ones which I showed you are for cooked.
Yeah.
But potato was raw. The first picture of potato that I showed you was raw, but most of the foods that I showed you were cooked foods.
Okay, and there was another
so
question.
If you look at my carb counting book, it's got both. It's got the raw and the cooked, both.
Okay. Yeah. There's another question, Cheryl. How is sourdough bread?
Sourdough bread.
Yeah,
that's a very good question. And sourdough is good. In fact, we promote sourdough because the whole fermentation process is different. But in terms of the carb counts, I would request you to read the food label and the packet, because, it depends on the size. Honestly, with breads, it depends on the size, because you get different sizes. And I feel in every part of India, you go to South India, your breads are very sweet. I come from Mangalore, and whenever I go to Mangalore, I crave for my regular bread because it's sweet bread that you get over there. Okay, gluten-free bread, like I told you, the weight is more. Okay, it's more heavier. So the carb count is usually on the higher side. So for breads, go by the food label on the packet. Or if you're just buying it from somebody who's, making it at home, a lot of home bakers, please ask them to do that exercise of, calculating the carbs. That'll help. I mean, giving you the raw ingredients. Obviously, they're not going to tell you their recipes because they're secret recipes. But at least if you can get a calculation in terms of how much of the carb-based ingredients that they're using, it will become easier for you to calculate.
Yes. There's another question on stevia. Can stevia replace sweeteners and can control blood sugar levels?
Yeah. Stevia is, I'll tell you, as per the guidelines, stevia and sucralose is safe to consume. But honestly, if I tell you from my practice, I prefer the child eating normal sugar, and accounting for it. Even the ISPAT guidelines say that you can. You're not going to overdo it, but a small spoon of sugar and accounting for the carbs would be better, because with sweeteners, there's a lot of now emerging evidence that it causes an imbalance in your gut flora. And today we're all talking about gut health. Gut is the new brain. And there's a huge impact of the kind of food that we eat on our gut health. So there's a lot of emerging evidence. Even I've come across evidence in regards to stevia. And therefore, I would say eat the real thing, eat less. And I would urge all parents, a lot of parents come to me and say, my child refuses to have milk without sugar. My child refuses to have curd without sugar. But who's put the habit to the child? The child never learned to do it, right? So we put that habit. So obviously now the child is used to it. So if you are having another child, another sibling of this child, please make sure whoever is young, do not form these habits. Sugar, salt can be highly addictive. And that's why we find it very easy to manage 3-4-year-old kids rather than 10 and 11-year-old kids, because they've been exposed to everything. But stevia in moderation as per guidelines can be used. That's the answer. But your maltitol and your sugar alcohols are not recommended in children because they cause diarrhea, they cause bloating, they cause a lot of gastric discomfort. So that is something that we won't. When a lot of these keto products are made with that ingredient. So you'll have to be a little watchful. Like if you look at the Amul ice cream, I remember when my son saw it and it's written over there, it's not recommended for kids. He says, why do they make ice cream which is not recommended for kids? So basically, if you see, Amul ice cream has also got sugar alcohols. And that is why they say it's not recommended for kids. The sugar-free ice cream.
Yes. So there's another question about coconut water, since it's a summer.
You must read my book. I've got a section on coconut water, mango, everything, but I'll just answer it here. Coconut water can be consumed instead of a fruit. Have it with the malai. I know even I've been guilty of the fact of telling people don't have the malai, but go back to your childhood. I still have good memories of going to, some of the places in my hometown in, around Mangalore, Chikmagalur, where we were given coconut water. We were put, the poha, which is your rice flakes. They add the coconut and they add the malai, and then they give you that to eat, and it's really tasty. Okay, again, that could be one way of lowering the glycemic index of the food. But when you're having coconut water, have it with the malai or have it with a handful of nuts so that the glucose release or the sugar release is slower. But it can be consumed instead of a fruit. There's no problem.
Yes. This question is from Arush, and he says his son is 2 years old. Milk is increasing the sugar. Is there any supplement for milk which helps him in growth as well?
Actually, honestly, I'm not a huge, I don't really push somebody to have milk. You can have paneer, you can have curd, you can have tofu, any of that is fine. I think curd and paneer is something which all children like, and that can be easily consumed. So milk does cause the sugars to go high. That's even in our experience, we've seen it.
Yes.
And if you eat eggs, then eat eggs also. So that will be again good.
Okay. So this question is from Sheetal. Why fermentation foods go high in carbs?
Yeah, so fermentation process itself, it makes the nutrients easily available. So in that, it also makes the glucose easily available. So it basically increases the glycemic index of the food. And if you look at my book, there is a chapter on, cooking. And I have mentioned this. In fact, there's an entire chapter on glycemic index and glycemic load. So we've actually spoken about resistant starch, which is now the big thing, wherein you cook and cool food. So when you cook a potato or you cook rice or you cook sweet potato or pasta and you keep it in the fridge for 24 hours, and then you reheat it for very, very low, at very, very low temperatures. This has got resistant starch, which resists digestion, more fiber, and a lower glycemic index. So fermentation, moist cooking will increase the glucose levels.
Yes. Next question is from Rajiv. Are artificial sweeteners totally carb-free?
Sugar alcohols are not totally carb-free. 50% gets digested and absorbed as carbs, but the stevia and the sucralose are all non-nutritive sweeteners in the sense they do not have any carbs. But remember, if a food is made out of it, that will have carbs. So, for example, having a muffin or a cake or a kheer, that will still have carbs because you're still adding some amount of the other ingredients which are having carbs. So Chanda, that's what I said, everybody has their own experiences. Somebody's asked about, Chanda's asked about rice. It didn't work for her. But for most of our patients, it's worked. But if it didn't work for you, then that's something that you will have to then follow. Like I said, poha also, most of my people tell me with poha, it spikes up glucose. But I have somebody who says poha does wonders to their sugars. And then I say, okay, great. Then that means poha loves you and please love poha back and eat it, so that's how it should be. It is very, very individualized. What I'm telling you is a general observation, what we have seen, and what is evidence-based, but each one will have their own experience.
Yes, there's another question from Komal. Is it okay to give regular wheat chapatis as lot of fats on almond flour and coconut flour?
No, please give regular, Baba. It's more economical also, it's more sustainable also. I think this whole fear for foods I'm telling you, I have all my patients who eat regular stuff and do very well. It's all about discipline. It's all about, and remove the fear for food. Honestly, enjoy your diabetes. Enjoy your life with diabetes. There's much more to life than just all this.
I have a question from my side as well, Shirils. Nowadays, I keep hearing a lot about plant-based proteins.
Correct.
So I want to know how they affect the levels.
No, see, plant-based is very good. In fact, if you look at now, also in this COVID times, everybody is looking at plant-based. And if you look at India, we predominantly plant-based. You tell me, even when it comes to non-veg, how often do we really consume it? Most people whom I speak to, they say we are non-vegetarians, but they consume it maybe once or twice a month, or at the most once or twice a week. Unless, yes, you're coming from a hardcore non-vegetarian family who consumes it every day. So there's a lot of evidence in terms of plant-based. But remember, when it comes to plant-based, you have to be very careful about your B12. So make sure that, you are also supplementing with nutrients. Like vegan diets can cause B12 levels to go down. Your iodine needs to be monitored. And therefore, if you all are using all these pink salts and all these different kinds of colored salts that have also become very popular today, they're not iodized. So there you will have to be a little careful and watchful of your iodine. So if you're following a particular diet, make sure you're taking care of the deficiencies that could arise because of the diet. So I'm not going to tell you a vegan diet is not good because we have good evidence to show that it works. However, make sure that whatever deficiencies are there in the diet is met well from supplements or whatever else that you can take.
Yes.
And you should enjoy. See, if you're forcing your child to do it, I'm telling you, recently I had a parent, child who came to me where the parents forced this child for 2 years to have a vegan diet, and a vegan diet which is so strict that it was only vegetable juices and sprouts. Now, remember, that's a very crucial time in this child's life. She's a girl, for her growth in terms of height. Because after they achieve menarche, they don't really grow in height, unlike the boys. And she's stunted. She's not grown at all in her height. And she didn't enjoy the diet at all. And today, just eating a regular, normal diet, her sugars are fantastic. So don't take it so far also. Imagine you're subjecting a child to having only vegetable juices and salads and sprouts. They have a long life ahead of them.
There's another question from Subbu. Will gluten affect everyone, or how do you know if it is affecting you?
I think it's see, with type 1, you definitely need to do a celiac test. And I know for a fact that in South India, we really didn't worry about celiac because celiac is seen more in the northern parts of India. But today with so much of migration happening, you know, people are moving. Like I'm from Bangalore originally, but I know that if I go to Bangalore today, only 40% of people living there are actually localites. Everybody else is from north of India because of the kind of IT hub and everything else. So today it's very important that we all test for celiac and diagnosis. I know a lot of doctors who are doing it. Again, ask your doctor. But if you are diagnosed as celiac positive, because there are tests which diagnose, then yes, you have to avoid gluten. In fact, some people are very sensitive to gluten. You have to even have separate utensils for them. Or you do a food intolerance or a Fadia top test, and you see that you know you are allergic to gluten, or your body is reacting to gluten, or you have a leaky gut syndrome, then yes, avoid it. But if you have nothing, and just because you've heard somebody say, hey, give up gluten and you will lose weight or your sugars get better, then don't follow it. Because I somehow believe, I've got a section on gluten also in my book, because I feel the moment you stop gluten, you stop your pizzas, you stop your burgers, you stop your biscuits, you stop your rusk, you stop so many things, because everything has gluten. So that is why your access to unhealthy foods becomes negligible, or you can't eat too much of it. And then you automatically will lose weight and your sugars will improve. And you attribute it to removing gluten from your diet. So that is something that it's very, very case specific, but there is no evidence to show that gluten causes any problems.
Okay.
But though I still advocate the use of barley and millets a lot. So I'm definitely an advocate of it. And I think that's really good. And I think in Hyderabad, we have the Millet Association of India. I know you'll have restaurants which are only dedicated to millets. And you get food which is only cooked with millets. But yes.
There's a question from Samir about jackfruit flour.
Oh, wow. Interesting question. In fact, I just spoke to the person who's who's the owner of Jackfruit 365. Again, we've started using it with our children with type 1 diabetes. The
What?
initial results are pretty promising.
Okay.
Can you mute whoever it is? Yeah. So basically, there's some good, we've seen some good results with our patients, especially post-meal glucose levels are definitely better, gives you good satiety. What feedback I got is that satiety is better, and it's basically having no taste. So because of that, it can easily be incorporated in anything. You can even give it with curd, or you can add it to the dal, or you can add it to the chapati, and the acceptability is good. So yes, that can be, and also it's a good prebiotic.
Yes.
Banana flour is a good prebiotic, raw banana flour. And today we're talking so much about gut health. So if you're used to having it, or if you have memories of your grandmother giving it to you, now you know why they were giving you a certain food.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yeah,
like many type 1s are, like being autoimmune condition, many of them have some or the other, one or two autoimmune conditions, right? So some of them also experience psoriasis, arthritis, like that. Any information on food and inflammation?
Yeah, there's a lot. In fact, Lakshmi, that's a good question. So, I've also done my IBS course from Monash University, and we try and exclude foods which could be aggravating this condition. And then we strengthen the gut, and then we reintroduce the foods. But I'm telling you, food has a huge role to play in these conditions. One is stress. Psoriasis is definitely, we've seen stress is one huge factor. Food also plays a big role. So one is strengthening the gut, giving a good dose of pre-pro symbiotics, and excluding certain foods which can aggravate the conditions, and then looking at the improvement in symptoms, and then reintroducing the foods one by one to see whether, is the person again reacting to it, and it works beautifully.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I think let's take 2 more questions. Can we use psyllium husk for cookies?
Yes, you can. In fact, even if you want to make your pesarattu dosa and add psyllium husk. In fact, in my book, one of the superfoods that I've mentioned is psyllium husk. Don't overdo it, because remember, overdoing a fiber. A lot of people I know, especially if you go to these slimming centers, they will give you oats brand rotis to eat. Okay, and people, poor thing, eat it because they can do anything to lose weight. But remember, when you have a lot of fiber in your food, fiber interferes with the absorption of nutrients. So you really are not able to absorb nutrients. So overdoing anything, even if it's healthy, is not good. Whether it's protein, whether it's fiber, everything within the limits and the recommendations. But yes, psyllium husk can be added to your rotis. It can be added to your cookies. You see some good results.
Yes.
Yeah, muted.
Yes. There's one more question from Sheetal, Cheryl. It's about your comment on emmer wheat.
That's another thing. When they say it is gluten-free. Khapli wheat. It's called khapli wheat. That's becoming very popular. So thanks to all my patients, I've learned. I must, that's always, my learnings and whatever I've learned so far is because of them. Because suddenly they'll come up with something and then I have to go and review literature. But I have reviewed literature on this, which is khapli wheat. It does have gluten. So it's not gluten-free for sure. The amount of gluten it has is lesser, but it does have gluten. So it cannot be labeled as a gluten-free food. So for anybody who's got real gluten intolerance in terms of celiac and all, then I wouldn't give it to them.
Yeah, in fact, I've been trying this khapli wheat flour for Dishna, and it's definitely working better than the regular wheat.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm still like
no, it's good. Yeah. So if it's available, yes, but it's not gluten free. A lot of people
it's not. It has considerably
lesser
gluten.
amount, but it does have gluten. Like especially for celiac. My most important thing is for celiac. People with celiac, then you have to avoid it.
Yeah, I have also been using this emmer wheat, which is known as khapli wheat. I know the availability is a big issue. It does has gluten, but the gluten bond which it has is very weak. So
weak,
right? Yeah.
Yes, but again, you like even my celiacs, I tell them you try it, but if it causes a reaction, then stop using it. Again, because not everybody is that sensitive. Like some people are very, very sensitive. Like I told you, even using a same utensil and it reacts. Some people are lesser sensitive. But yes, it is definitely low in this. How is it in GI and carb? Anupama, I have done my thing. I'll have to get back to you because offhand I don't remember. But I can get back to you all on this. I think I'll just post it on the group.
Yes.
I don't really offhand. I think the carb content will remain the same. I will check about the GI because remember GI of foods is not done. It's very expensive to do a GI of a particular food. Every food that you want to do a GI costs 3 lakh rupees. And that's why we really don't have enough data. We still go back to the University of Sydney, which has a very large GI database. But again, that's not Indian foods.
Yeah.
Because in India, we really don't have enough data. You'll see a lot of information which is there, but everybody is contradicting the other. Some people say this is high, some say this is this. We really don't know. Yes. So I don't think there would be the GI of khapli wheat, but however, I will find out and I'll let you know.
I have one more question, Cheryl. There are a lot of questions coming about GI and GL. So glycemic load. So which should be considered and given more priority?
See, both are important, Divya. It's like, GL just helps you get the, it's like the puzzle better, you get to this because GI is yes, but GI, we don't eat. Like, for example, if I tell you bread has a high GI, but do I just eat a bread as it is? The moment I add salad, I add some paneer or I add egg or I add some protein, I lower the GI, right?
Yes.
So we eat a mixed meal. For example, rice will be high GI, but add dal to it, add vegetables to it, add curd to it. Automatically, my GI goes down because the glycemic load and also the carb load goes down. It depends on the amount of carbs that you're eating. For example, if I'm looking at watermelon, now watermelon is one food I remember when I started my practice 20 years back. Doctors used to tell me, please don't give watermelon to any of our diabetic patients. Why? Because it has a high GI of 72. But you look at the glycemic load of watermelon. Glycemic load is only 4. So it comes very low GL. Yes. So therefore, it can be consumed. So basically, GL is how much you're eating of that food. So that is what your GL is. So it basically is carbs and GI ka factor. You calculate it and you get the GL. And mango. For example, today everybody is saying, again, today nowadays doctors are saying you can eat mango. First, I'm sure everybody said don't eat mango.
Yes.
That's why in type 1, we don't say don't eat anything because it's something that they have to live with lifelong. They have to just take insulin. But again, the principles of healthy eating apply. I always tell my children, you are like every other child. The only thing that is missing in your body is insulin. So while your body is automatically giving insulin when you're eating food, in your case, you have to take insulin from out, but you can still enjoy everything else. So the moment you give that positive reinforcement, I think that helps these children grow better. Otherwise, they will eat on the sly. We have so many mothers who come and tell us a child has gone down to play and come back with high sugars. Why? Because the child has gone and eaten something on the sly. Child is not agreeing. Child is denying that he has eaten something. Mango can have, depending on the variety, because we in India have so many varieties of mango that we get. So it can range from anywhere between a 50 to a 60, 65 GI. But again, it depends on how much mango. For example, I'm eating only 100 grams of a mango. My GL will be less than 10 or 11, which still comes under moderate and low GL. So it's fine. So that's why we say whatever fits your fist is the size of fruit to eat. Always club the fruit with nuts. So have the fruit and nut combination. And it's not the chocolate fruit and nut, but fruit and nuts. So if you do that, so itna fruit, itna nuts, together if you have, automatically the GL will go down. And now in this season, have a fruit parfait. Take hunkered, put fruit, put crushed nuts, put it in the freezer, remove it out before some time and have it nice and chilled. The child is also so happy. Give it as a pre-workout snack. It's amazing. So we have to change our mindset. And I'm telling you, the newer insulins, I think today with so much of awareness that we are doing, I think it's really helping. Because, the Western dietitians are shocked when they interact with our Indian patients or when they interact with our Indian dietitians or doctors. Because they say, you are so restrictive. Why do you all do this? But I'm like, we're getting there, we're definitely getting better. We're having such sessions. People are understanding. And that's good.
Definitely. There are a lot of changes in the diet.
Absolutely. I don't know if there is somebody who was diagnosed with diabetes maybe 30 years back. And today, Harsh tells me a lot of his stories because Harsh has type 1, his child has type 1. And he tells me about how he was as a child to today, what his child is able to enjoy. Because he was on premix, his child is on a basal bolus. And it makes a world of a difference.
Yes, things have changed a lot during the past.
We also have to change. We also have to be more positive.
Yes.
I think the only thing, they look forward to. The parents come so scared to us, and it's the first interaction with parents. They don't give. I am telling you recently, sorry, Harsh. Okay, go ahead.
It's okay. No, I had to change myself first of all because that was not the way diabetes was taught to me. Correct. When I was diagnosed. And when Arish got diagnosed, things were completely different. So yes, I had to unlearn many things before I started to learn again.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unlearning and relearning to do, honestly.
Absolutely.
And the fear of food has to be removed. Don't fall.
Moderation is
we had a patient who just came to us, and they consulted a dietitian in Nasik. And when we looked at the plan, the child could not eat rice. The child could not eat this fruit and that fruit. There's so many no's. And today the child is eating everything, including a mango, and sugars haven't crossed 160, 170. And no hypos. Okay, so it's all about understanding on how to do your carb budget, how to take insulin for the carbs. That's very important. And encouraging the children to do physical activity. I think we parents have that as the biggest challenge. Because when we were children, we used to wait to go down to play. Today, we have to force our children to go down to play because they're so addicted to their gadgets. So if we can get that right, sugars will automatically come under control.
Exactly. There are a lot of questions coming up. But we also have this time limit. It's already 6:30. And if you have any questions, please put it in the group.
Yeah, you can put it on the group, and I would request you, if you can, please read my book because everything is answered. Whatever I've spoken is all in my book. I've actually gone and put down everything that I know in that book, all my experiences, learning, knowledge. So please do that. And if you have any questions, please write to me.
Yeah, Cheryl, I think we can take this one question, which is different. What is the effect of alcohol on sugar?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. In fact, that was something that I had missed in my first book. But the second edition, I got that also put in because I realized that it was an important thing. But remember, alcohol causes sugars to go down. So you have to be very, very watchful. So if you're drinking alcohol, drink wisely. I'm not going to say don't drink, honestly, because that's not a practical advice. Because what happens is our children grow up, they go out with friends, they want to drink, but you have to educate them about how to do it right. Otherwise, they'll end up with problems. So first thing is do not mix them with aerated drinks because that will increase the amount of sugar. Always ensure that they eat something before they have alcohol. Have alcohol in moderation and always take the insulin dose, keeping that in mind that alcohol can cause late hypoglycemia. So ensuring that the person is eating well, like in the West, if you see, they will eat first and then they drink just to enjoy the drink. We drink so much that we are in no state to eat. And then, we go into severe hypoglycemia. So that is something which is extremely important. So again, how much to drink and, how to drink it, always eat something before you drink. This is so important. And don't have it with aerated drinks. You can have your vodka or, your strong beers have got more carbs. Sweet wines will have a little more carbs. And otherwise, if you look at vodka, gin, whiskey, rum, the amount of carbs is not so much. So that can be consumed with water or on the rocks. But that doesn't mean I'm encouraging drinking. Let me be very honest here, but I think we have to be practical because I have a lot of children who come to me and, sometimes they confide in me because they feel they can. So their parents don't know they drink or they, do whatever, but I know everything. And I think for me, it's important because see, for them also, it's a thing about, going and enjoying, feeling a part of the group, otherwise they get, left out. And that's why it's beer. If it's light beer, it has lesser carbs, but strong beer will have more carbs and calories. So that is about it, about the alcohol bit. In fact, that's so important. In fact, I have, these two very cute, they're thalassemia major, both these patients of mine. And it's wonderful, because they're so positive. They're thalassemia major, hypothyroidism, and type 1 diabetes. So it's a very, very deadly combination, but you should see them. They're so positive and they're best friends. So what they do is every 15 days, they go for their blood transfusion because they have to go every 15 days. That's the date that they have. So on that date in the evening, they'll go and have 2 pegs of vodka. And then they'll message me, we're having this, but they've learned how to titrate their insulin doses. And they are absolutely well controlled. So that is what they give themselves, or they look forward to that once in 15 days.
Interesting. Thank you, Cheryl. It was really very engaging session and very informative session. Got to know a lot of new things and really looking forward to your new book. Many.
Can we know the name of the book, please?
No, this is Diet and Diabetes Simplified, which is released. Maybe if I don't know how many of y'all are there, if y'all want to do it, y'all can maybe reach out to Lakshmi or to Nalini and let me know. I can maybe send it to them if you want to buy it directly, or you can buy it on Amazon. The other book that I'm doing is basically, it's going to be a version to the carb counting book. So I've done the carb counting book for Medtronic, but I'm coming out with a similar one. But that will happen only, I think it's going to take time because it's still in the proofreading phase. Plus, we're going to launch an app soon, which has got 5,000 Indian foods, which again is going to be my gift to type 1 children. So that is also in the pilot testing phase, and hopefully we should be able to launch it soon.
That's great.
Thank you. Because we realize these apps are very westernized. So we're trying to get something more Indian. So that also will happen. I know, Amreen, there's so many questions. It's always there. Now with nutrition, there's so much that you want to know. But I'll be happy to take a session again whenever you'll want me to. Post maybe, after April 15th or maybe the next month, because now it's my son's exams. So this is my last talk for the month. But I had committed to Lakshmi and I couldn't refuse it.
Yeah. We were very fortunate to have you.
Definitely.
Thank you, ma'am. I mean, people from all over
Somebody
the
has
country
asked about
joined.
digestion and she really wants me to answer it, So one thing is, Archana, you'll have to see why is there an issue? Why is the child pooping so often? Look at whether milk is causing it, because I've seen that milk does. And another thing you could try is a course of probiotics and see whether that helps, and try and identify what are the foods which are causing it. So you will have to see that. Sheetal, that app is going to come very soon, Sheetal. I will let you know. I'm on your group, so I will definitely let you know. I can't disclose too much now because it's still in that very, we're not yet completely ready. So, Archana, we'll have to see what it is, whether the child has got some kind of a condition due to which this is happening.
So if in any case you have any questions, please post it on the group. We can take it forward from there, and also hope to have one more session. I mean, many more sessions like these. Really glad to have you here, Cheryl. And yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Nalini.
Thank you
Divya.
so much,
Good
Cheryl.
to see you, Chanda.
This was an excellent session. Thank you so much. Hopefully, we'll have a couple more maybe in the coming months whenever you're free.
Sure.
And that'll be great. And thank you so much. And to the group, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, put your questions in the group, and then maybe we can get back to Cheryl and try to get your question answered. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you so much.
And have a good evening and have a great weekend. We have a long weekend, so please
Wish you the
enjoy.
same, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Have a great weekend. Happy Holi to everyone.
Happy-
Bye-bye. Stay
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
Yes.
Stay safe. All of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.